Story 1. Missing Time. I was working a graveyard shift as a security guard. It was a Friday into Saturday morning at a distribution center. I was on duty at the personnel entrance all night long. One other guard had been on duty at the truck entrance, but he had to leave at 4 a.m. when the trucks stopped arriving. It was a bit cold, so I sat in the chair cross-legged for several hours. Bad idea. To add further stupidity to the situation, I was wearing a thick belt and had a Glock 17 in a pancake holster that rides on the hip. This was totally unauthorized, but I had just brought it and thought it would be cool to carry it. When 8 a.m. rolls around and everyone was out, it was time to make the rounds, checking all the gates and doors. When I finally stood up, I could tell that my sitting position had been a bad choice, as all the blood started rushing south, and I was feeling quite dizzy. I decided I should just leave and hope that everything was locked up. It was incredibly rare to find an unlocked gate or door. I paced around for a few minutes, then decided that I was feeling well enough to drive home. I walked to my car, opened the door, and then the next thing I know, I'm on a dirt road with 7-foot-tall hedges on both sides. I have no idea where I am. I listen for a minute and go in the direction where I think I hear cars. I walk for 5 minutes before reaching a group of houses. Finally, I find a street and know which way I need to go. It takes me another 15 minutes to walk back. As I approach the parking lot, I see my car. It's the only one in the lot. My driver door is still open. As I get closer, I can hear the bing, bing, bing going off as the key is in the ignition and the door is wide open. When I start the car, it's a bit after 9 a.m. I had been gone for almost an hour. I have no idea how I wound up on that dirt road. There's probably some mundane answer, but I'll never know. Story 2. A Little Wicked. This happened to a friend of mine. I know that might make this sound trite and unbelievable. All I can tell you is that she's very balanced and intelligent. We stumbled upon this topic when she said that she can't watch movies with things like the occult in it. It scares her too much. I told her that it doesn't really bother me, since I'm not a believer in witchcraft. After I said this, she paused and finally said, I am. I've experienced some pretty fucked up shit. Growing up, her parents were extremely conservative Christian and homeschooled her. As a teenager, she began to rebel against her parents and her parents' belief. She became Wiccan. This wasn't Wicca in its true sense, but rather the kind of Wicca that angry teenagers look for to do silly spells in order to try and regain some semblance of control over their overly structured life. She and her friend would slip into the woods. They lived in a very rural area. They would do this at night and do things such as bloodletting rituals, voodoo dolls, that sort of thing. It was all pretty benign. But then weird things started happening. She and her friend started having similar nightmares. This went on for a couple weeks, with the nightmares becoming more and more gruesome. Until one night, my friend dreamed of a man standing outside her window. When she woke up, she found that there was indeed a man standing outside her window, watching her while she slept. She was terrified, and she ran from the room to go get her parents. By the time they got there, he was gone. She and the friend immediately stopped doing their Wiccan rituals. The dreams eventually went away, and the man never reappeared. But here's where things get screwed up. A couple years after this happens, my friend overhears her aunt talking to her mother about that house she found in the woods. After some prodding, my friend's aunt reluctantly tells her the story. One day while she was taking a walk in the woods, she found an old, dilapidated house that she had never seen before. The house was clearly abandoned, and out of curiosity, she went in, and she found a horrifying scene. The walls were covered in blood. There was an overwhelming smell of rot and decay. Along with the decaying blood, there's something else on the walls. Family photos of my friend and her family. Exactly like the ones she has in her house, framed and hanging on the walls. The aunt fled the house and got my friend's father, but they could never find the house again. This all happened in the same time span that my friend was messing around with the occult. But her parents never told her about this because they didn't want to scare her. My friend has no idea why those things happened in those couple of weeks, but she will never touch anything remotely occult again. Story 3. Camping out. A few years ago, I was in my early 20s. My girlfriend and I decided to go camping out west. This is an area that is pretty much nothing but dirt and small trees. The nearest batch of civilization is a good 2 hours away. We decided to set up camp close to a small mountain, more like a large hill, that had a big dent inside of it where some mining had been done many years ago. We were camped out on top of a large trailings pile from the mine, which formed a small plateau at the top. Essentially, there's a small cliff at the perimeter, for the most part, and the steep inclines of the mountain/hill for the rest. This is essential to the story. Now, for the creepy part. We passed out in our tent, which was right at the edge of the cliffside. After drinking a lot of watermelon pucker and peach schnapps, I woke up in the middle of the night to a very strange noise that seemed to surround the tent. Very loud spitting, gurgling sound. It seemed to come from all directions. What? How? There was a cliff to my back and a steep mountain in the front. Petrified from fear, I laid in my sleeping bag trying to figure out what could be making this unearthly sound. After what seemed like forever, I finally mustered the courage to wake up my still very intoxicated girlfriend and instantly demanded that she stay quiet and just listen. I needed to make sure that I wasn't the only one that could hear this and that I wasn't like dreaming or something. I could immediately see the panic on her face. With fear in her voice, she quietly asked what it was. Trying to act tough and ease her panic, I decided to lie and say it was coyotes or something. After that, she decided to lay back down. Eventually, she fell asleep. I laid in my sleeping bag wide-eyed, still terrified, just listening and waiting to be eaten by monsters or aliens or whatever my imagination could come up with. Eventually, after what seemed like hours, I fell asleep. In the morning, there were no footprints, no tracks of any kind except our own outside of the tent. I confessed to her that I really had no idea what the sound was, or who it came from, or what. And that I laid awake most of the night, silently panicking. We quickly packed our things and left. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give me a like, drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Music for the episode is by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.